I'm Adam Sporka. I'm from Warhorse Studios, and I have been working on Kingdom Come Deliverance for the past 4 years. My responsibilities included game audio programming and music production, music composition, and these kinds of things. I was one of the two music composers there. So I'm also affiliated with the Department of Computer Graphics and Interaction at the Czech Technical University. I like to combine academia and the industry because I think that's a really nice thing to do, and helps someone, at least I hope so. It helps me being relevant in my research field and stuff like that. Yeah, of course, I'm with the Warhorse Studios, and recently I also joined a project, a startup, music startup called Wheel of Audio. We're making content for video games and stuff like that. So what I was going to tell you about today is how to, my experience when developing or implementing the music for Kingdom Come Deliverance, and also give you some overview of what the adaptive music is and how it works in our game in particular. So in the context of Kingdom Come, you have lots of areas, lots of parts of the world, lots of situations in the game. You have beautiful forests, you have beautiful landscapes, villages, you have action in the game, and all these kinds of things need to be somehow supported by the game. And yeah, this is the two of us. This is the two musicians working on the team. Jan Valta wrote most of the music, so you will hear most of his stuff in the game. I wrote stuff like old parts of the thing, like a medieval music, some combat scenes, some darker, some designy parts and layers. And yeah, and I'm really happy to announce that our Kingdom Come Deliverance OST is out, which is super nice, because also the game is out, of course. Like it's out for 3 hours and 4 minutes, so that's something which is super exciting. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of score writing, like a lot of music writing. It's right there. That this was when we were recording music for, when we were doing the orchestral recording in Rural Phenom last summer. This much of the score had to be printed for the musicians. And also it has been a lot of programming. I implemented our own adaptive music middleware because I like to make things from scratch, and also because it just gave us a great deal of freedom what to do exactly, because I was able to tweak very fine details of the behavior of the system. So yeah, and it's been a lot of recording. We recorded the most of the cutscene soundtrack here. It was a great honor to actually hold this set of keys there, because a lot of great music has happened in this building. So I'm super excited that our music has been there as well. Yeah, and also we have been recording stuff with authentic instruments. So there is a part of the medieval soundtrack, and yeah, and there has been also lots of music design. So what I mean by music design, it is a great tradition to have music in your video game, right? It's something which determines or declares the genre of your music, of your video game. It's able to present emotion. It's able to tell you whether something is happy, joyful, or depressing, and it can do it through your eyes as a player eyes, through the player eyes, or world, like it could be either actor-based or world-based, and of course you can. Someone told me that it's a great way how to suppress your mind, suppress your analytical mind, and just let only the emotions live through the moment. It's something which is able to set up the expectations. So it tells you how difficult certain things are going to be in comparison to other situations that you might have encountered before. it also determines the pace of the game somehow. So it tells you how fast you need to respond to certain things, because of course, like slower parts, probably the timing is not an issue, whereas in some super high energetic like combat situations or these kinds of things, then the game pace would be obviously different. In the technical terms, it's something which we call sonification. Sonification is sonification is a synthesis of audio output based on what is happening in the system that you need to somehow mediate to your users. In our case, it's the game and its state. And the changes in the music over time indicate changes in the game, obviously. Right, so we usually start with, like a number of hours of gameplay that we expect to have, and then, then we definitely need to know some sort of activities in the game. We need to know what specific cutscenes there are. We need to know what specific dramaturgy, what specific like a game design there is, like a gameplay design, of course. But at the same time, some decisions are purely pragmatic. Like how often are you going to be in a town? How often are you going to be in the countryside? How often are you going to be talking to people? And how long these things will last and take? And how often do you get to do these kinds of things? Because obviously you would not like to have music repeating over and over in one particular situation. So let's see how we managed. Anyway, so you just need to see how long certain parts of the gameplay take, and then just go from there. And then just decide how many assets you need for each. There is, so what is actually adaptive music? Adaptive music is, well, many games were playing different pieces of music for, let's say, like menu parts, like a main menu, or like a level that you actually are in the gameplay, and they were switching between tracks. That's not something which is considered adaptive music. That's like playing tracks and switching between them. So. And many systems work like that. That you have a menu music, you have some levels, like a loop for each level. There would be some sort of advancement jingle, some sort of a winning jingle, some sort of a game over jingle. This is like a typical platformer kind of a thing where you have distinct levels in the game, and it works. It's it's done. You just need to make the assets and it's done pretty much. And there are beautiful games like that. I totally recommend Nimble Quest, which has a really super nice soundtrack for it. It's a handheld device based thing. Adaptive music is also, sometimes it's called dynamic music. It's you have more complex control of the playback of your assets, or sometimes you even generate them on the fly, depending on the genre. There are beautiful examples of generative audio, of generative music, which is entirely based, like entirely composed, from some predetermined rules. So basically you have an engine which is aware of the state of the game somehow, because you have a bunch of let's say probes, bunch of things which tell you like how my health is going, what the time of the day is, how much how far am I from a town, how far I am from the nearest enemy, who wants to kill me, are they really bad, or are they armed, or are they not armed, all these kinds of things. And that determines your music space. The music space is something which tells you what all kinds of music you need to have, what kind of assets you need to have. So you need to understand what the context of the game, whether you're exploration, stealth, combat, mini games, all these kinds of things. Then you are working with some variables like health status, imminent loss, expected victory, all these kinds of things. And then it comes down to charts like this, like doodles like this. So this might be like a sketch of an adaptive music of some location-based racing game, let's say, right? Because you don't exactly know how long it would take you to, let's say, drive through or ride your horse through the fields, and then ride through the forest, and then go to the city, and then like when you hit the finish line. And you still would like that these things happen naturally, that the transitions between the parts happen naturally. So you don't really know the timing, you know the order. That's that's helpful sometimes. Sometimes you don't have that in open world. Let's say you have a game which is sort of a capture the flag kind of a scenario. You have two enemies. I mean, like you have two parties playing, like a player versus player kind of a thing, and then depending on where you are in the map, you might want to hear music which is attributed to one party or the another party, depending on how that region has been claimed by someone, right? Like by the other party, and that gives you an idea, like how deep into the enemy lines you are, these kinds of things. Or you have one-on-one combat situation that and you would like to sonify the relationship, the health status between you and your opponent. So this might be me, this might be me, this might be my opponent, and we both start when our health is at the maximum level. Just think of Mortal Kombat, for example. So you start a match, and everything is like equal. You guys are equal in terms of your health and your status, and then so that would be probably some sort of upbeat music, but not so energetic, because you still have a long way to go. When you are losing your health, and your health is going to zero, you might be playing some sort of a losing music, because that's something that you would like to illustrate. Or on the other hand, you have almost all the health and your opponent doesn't have any, so you probably are winning. So so you can be more like chill at that point. This is probably where the most energetic part of the music is going to happen, because you would like to illustrate that there is a tie between the two parties, and anyone who gets to like manage to get the next hit is going to win. Right. So those are like spaces, like design spaces of the music. And now what can you do with that? You probably want to work with some. Well, most of the video game music these days is pre-composed or pre-produced, but the question is at how much of a level of how much of granularity you have there. But when you are dealing with the playback of existing material, you are most likely going to use one of these three techniques. So you are probably going to use resequencing, which is that you have a bunch of stuff and you're selecting what to play next. Or you can use reorchestration, that you have multiple layers of music, and then you just add different layers and just switch them off, switch them back on as you need. And you might be smart about that. You might time those transitions, or like those fade outs with the beat, so that you start the next thing, so that it seems that you're starting the next thing on the next bar, or the next like logical element of the music. Or you can modulate things, so you have like one stream of audio, and you can modify some the timbre of the overall thing. You may want to illustrate that your character is like not doing well, and so you can just do some sort of low pass filter, for example. Some games are doing this. It's a simple trick, but it works very often. This is probably the closest to the data sonification, because you have literally one knob, and the knob is being directly addressed, or directly modulated by some absolute value in the game, in the RPG system or whatnot. Or you can just generate your content online. So that could be some sort of a procedural music generation, and there are beautiful examples of all these kinds of things. I will probably tweet these slides so that you can just get those links here. Anyway, so Fallout New Vegas, it's a great example of a reorchestration. You have multiple layers in the same place, and they go from low, mid, and high, and then there are some other sonic elements added afterwards, but there is some sort of a baseline which is determined by how intense the situation is, and it works beautifully. or Monkey Island. Monkey Island 2, they used resequencing and reorchestration at the same time. It's also a beautiful thing, and it's actually pretty old, honestly, 1991, because adaptive music is not something which has not been, it has been around here for some time. Yeah, and generative music. That's the other part of the adaptive music that you can do. It's basically you are you're building your own synthesizers, and then you're playing them on the fly. And these synthesizers would be responsible for certain patterns of music, and you switch them off and on. So it's a little bit like this thing, but in a more, let's say, fine-grained way. And it's who of you have heard about modular synthesizers? Hands up. Yes. So this is pretty much based on these kinds of things. So you had giant machines which look a bit like control centers of some nuclear power plants or something like that, and then individual parts are responsible for, I don't know, filtering signal, generating signal, sequencing signal, all these kinds of things, and you just can patch things using signal cables. So this is happening actually because people are doing that. For example, Leonard Paul made a great generative music soundtrack for his SimCell soundtrack. So he built all these things in all these systems in pure data. Pure data is also it's kind of a gateway thing to modular synthesizers. So if you guys don't know what to do with your time, just start with pure data and just start doing things. It's a really great way how to play with things like that. And there are multiple other techniques and stuff like that. So KCD music, because I promised that I would tell you something about my experience with KCD music, and I have not been talking about that too much. So we actually use resequencing and reorchestration because our music is symphonic, right? We use symphonic music, so we cannot really generate that on the fly. It's like extremely impractical to render, let's say, MIDI things and like have huge banks of samples and these kinds of things. That wouldn't really work. So we have pre-composed parts, we have pre-produced parts which are mastered and recorded. Some of them are live, some of them are made using high quality samples. So the tagline of the game is Dungeons, No Dragons. So it's 1400s, it's open world, it's a sandbox RPG, and so we had multiple contexts, we had combats, we had battles. We had dialogues, and we did have unknown order of these contexts. And we wanted the thing to sound like a film. So we wanted to have a film-like score there. So we used as I actually mentioned that thing. Our influences were Zdeněk Liška, William Stromberg, Luboš Fischer, and John Williams. Right. So what kind of thing we have? What kind of things we have? We have some exploration music, which is based on the location, like which is driven by the location, or weather, or recent crime that you conducted some crime and something happens. That's usually like ambient, slow-paced landscape environment. These kinds of adjectives or tags could be attributed to it. And then we have some action music, which is stealth, which is combat, which is chase. That's fast-paced. It is determined by the state of the player versus enemy situations and all that. Right, and we use something which is called Sequence Music Engine. I'm going to show you how it works. This is actually the entire in-game soundtrack of the Kingdom Come Deliverance. This thing. It shows you. How do I? Yeah, this represents all the content that we have in the game, and I wonder if we can have some. Yes. Sorry. Yes. So each line represents a part of our soundtrack, and each line represents a scene, basically. Well, like some scenes have multiple parts, and they are selected based on what is happening in the game. So this happens when you run the game and you start the thing, and you are in the main menu, and the game tells you, well, player is no longer in the main menu. So this is the only fade out we have in the game, like in the context of the in-game music. Of course, we had to do fade outs between. Like in-game music and cutscenes for technical reasons, but otherwise we don't really use fade outs in our thing. So okay, all these things could be selected, all the things which are highlighted. So these 6 here, and maybe some others which are on some other screens. There's a lot, really lot of material. We have like 4.5 hours of in-game music in the game. Anyway, so I show you some of the transitions that we have. So these things are something that we call exits, and or branches, and they have a different color. And based on the color that actually happens, that you encounter, these things can link to any of these scenes, and they would start with, and the destination scenes would start with the same color, and it's and the entire soundtrack is composed that these exits are compatible with these intros, basically. So I'll show you what happens when I let's say go to Samopeš, to one of our locations. So this thing still plays a bit. Now we're escaping. Right. So I just made a really seamless transition from one scene to another. Right. That's it. And we're in a town, so we can seamlessly flow from one system, one part of the music to another. Let's do it again. So let's see. Let's go back to the field. Leaving this thing, and then we are here. Right, so this is what we have. This would be really slow for combat. When you need to enter combat, this would be like super slow. You're not really like, hey, don't hit me just yet. I just need to finish this phrase. Okay, now you can hit me. No, it doesn't work like that. It kind of needs to happen immediately. Well, of course, the players don't have to type these things. That's the game which actually is like doing these things. And we're there. We're like we're in the combat right now. And this is actually a fist fight, so it does not contain much. Yeah, let me just do this thing. Combat phase. So we always have this kind of a warm-up phase, which is there before the actual fight starts. You know that someone is after you, and someone is really trying to kill you or like hit you, and you stay in this context up until someone actually hits someone else, and then you start with the actual combat music. Yeah. Okay, so this is a fist fight, right? So no one is actually armed or anything, but let's say that Henry says, "Well, okay, I've had enough. I'm just going to take out my sword," and immediately the things become way more intense, right? Right. So this is how these things work in our game. Okay, so let's pretend that we have won our combat. I hope the command is going to be correct. Yes. Sometimes I forget these things, and then okay, we have this thing that we have. The combat music doesn't really end immediately, because it might be that there is some kind of an NPC hiding around the corner. So I might just might need to get back to the combat immediately. And I didn't want to lose the tempo. I didn't want to lose the beat. So that's why we have this kind of a really long tail at the end of the combat music. And once that thing is done, let's fast forward. Yeah. Once that thing is done, we go back to some exploration music. Yeah. So this is pretty much how these. Oh, I need to switch off the combat, of course. Yes. Nice. Yeah. So I think what else do I have? Yes. I've shown you this thing. I've shown you transition via Sinels. Yes, I've shown you that. We have a couple other tricks. I don't think that. Well, yeah, this is actually important. So we use traditional scoring. So most of our music, Jan Valta. Well, I was cheating. I was making the music in my DAW. Most of my music I just made in my DAW. But Hansa was actually like writing score, so that was his. Our workflow of the big cinematic parts, like a big cutscenes, was actually that he wrote the score to the one of those things with gazillion number of lines. We had great deal of creative freedom, which was awesome. We were involved very early in the game development, which really helped. And we had a really close link between the developers and the musicians, because I'm actually one of the developers, like one of the programmers. And yeah, and we made our own adaptive middleware. Okay, so I think this is all for my part of the talk, and now I'll be happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Adam, very much.